Oh. Camera difficulties at the start. We'll see if that stays. All right, focused. Had a question in one of the comments about this holster because it was in the background, one of the videos. This is an El Paso holster for a Colt single action army, and this is their hardened model. And I can't remember, this is just their basic belt. You know, if you go onto their website, you'll see it. And I think it's a good little piece of kit. Straight up, it pretty much sits in my apartment. I'm not a cowboy. I don't use this. But I liked old cowboy movies growing up. Tombstone was awesome. So obviously that's how I ended up with this. But El Paso has been around for a while. I want to say like the 1880s. And for what, you know, it's a nice leather. I can't say I'm a gigantic leather connoisseur person. And but for what it is, it seems well put together. I've read about that El Paso has had quality issues in recent times, and some people have been unhappy with them in certain aspects. I can't say that was my experience with this particular holster, although this is the only holster that I own from them. And you can see, so this has got a lining in there. I think this is like pigskin or something. It's not suede. And I don't know if I can catch this on camera. So the lining is coming undone a little bit, but I mean, that's from holstering and reholstering, which it's going to happen. And you can see the stitching right there has kept it in place. So all that means is just, I'm guessing they glue this here. And then over time, you know, the cylinder from the gun hitting on this when I'm holstering the gun just wears it down. You know, it's just part of life. But the stitching itself is held up fine. So as far as this and hard use, I can't say I've done it. So I can't speak to, like, if you're out every day with this actually being a cowboy, how well would it hold up? I don't know. But, you know, it's a nice little rig, and it works basically. So, and then the gun, I guess I'll show this as well. We're getting some weird light here with the sun moving. Let me see if we can fix that. I think that's better. So the gun itself, though, that this goes with, I liked Tombstone and Wide Earp and all that stuff growing up. And this is a Colt single action army. There's a lot of videos on this already, so I won't go into huge detail on it. I found, so growing up, I didn't really shoot cowboy guns. My dad didn't have any, just our regular old semi-auto stuff. And it's kind of funny, it took me a little while to figure out this grip, because initially I wanted to hold it like this, because that's kind of like how you would hold a 1911, right? Because, you know, you think about your magazine, that's just the angle that it's at. So it took me a little while and to figure this out, because, okay, you're holding that right here, so how do you actually, you know, reach up and get the hammer? That's uncomfortable. And initially, that's how I was kind of doing it, and it wasn't comfortable either, just because this is kind of sharp, relatively speaking. I mean, it's fine. It's not actually sharp, but, you know, it's an edge. So the recoil from this would kind of eat into the hand when it was cold and stuff. So, but over time, I figured out you're actually supposed to kind of come up further like this. Watching some people actually knew what the heck they were doing. At that point, your hand is actually in the right spot to, you know, manipulate the hammer. And it's kind of cool. You look at this. This is a very well thought out hammer. You can see how this just naturally works. You know, like my hand or my thumb there just naturally falls in the right spot to cock it. So one of the things about this one is you'll hear like Colt, C-O-L-T, and the hammer should click back 4 times. So if we listen, well, that was only 3. So why was that? Well, this is in fact a real Colt single action army, and I bought this used in, it was made in 2012, and I bought it in, I think, 2017 or 18, I can't remember, maybe late 2017. Anyway, it was used, and it had some beaten up stuff here and there. It didn't really come with any paperwork. The ejector rod had a little ding there, nothing serious, but it's seen some use, and I didn't really mind that, because I wanted a gun that I wouldn't feel bad about shooting, basically. And also there's some drag lines from the cylinder right there. I don't know if someone was just basically, if you bring this to half cock, you should never then try to lower the hammer because, you'll create that kind of thing. But anyway, yeah, so that, I don't know how that happened exactly because I actually sent this off to Peacemaker specialists, and he did his action job on it. He's a very good, or guess I should say was, because sadly, to my understanding, the gentleman has passed on. But yeah, the guy at Peacemaker Specialist, I think his name is Eddie Janis, and I believe he has since passed away, did his action job on this, and it was a decent amount of money. And but I'll say this, it was definitely worth it. And so the reason you don't hear the 4 clicks on this is because this action job is so like tight. The 3rd and 4th click actually happens simultaneously. I don't know if let's do it one more time. So anyway, yeah, those basically go on at the same time. So you actually only get 3 clicks with the Eddie Janis action job because it's such a tight fit. And then it also has a pretty. I had him do a 4-pound trigger on this. I like kind of heavier triggers. I think you could do 2.5 to 4 pounds. The business is still open. I'm not sure if someone else still will do the action jobs or not. You'd have to call them. That being said, it's a pretty solid action job. It feels really good. And the guy was a real stand-up dude. He actually called me and he said, because I sent him off my gun, and he called me and said, hey, in X amount of years, I'm really sorry, but I was unscrewing one of your screws and I accidentally slipped out of the screw and slightly scratched your frame. And he said, I'll go ahead and I'll have it sent off to this guy who does really solid color case hardening and completely recolor case hardening the frame. Quite honestly, I would have been like, it's not that big a deal. It was like a small little scratch, but the guy was like a true professional and really like cared about his craft. Rare today. But anyway, so yeah, that was completely recolor case hardened. That's like $1,000 hit that he took, and to whoever he sent it off to, and it looks pretty good. I actually like the color case hardening better than the Colt one, and so yeah, it's for me, it's a gun that I shoot, and I don't feel bad about it getting dinged up. I mean, I take care of it, and I'm not sure that I would like take it out in the rain and just completely like and sand and like do some kind of torture test. It's not like that, but I shoot it and I don't feel bad about it. And but I actually talked to Eddie Janis on the phone while he was doing this, and I was just asking him some questions. So one of the things he says on his website is he would not recommend taking this apart if he's done an action job. And I just asked, just out of curiosity, I was like, well, why? Why is that? And he said, well, I have a certain way of putting stuff back together, and just the nature of how I do it. He said it's my personal trick of the trade. I'm not going to really tell you, which I respect that. Man's got to keep his secrets and all that kind of stuff. But it was kind of interesting. He did let on because I asked him a little bit because I was like, just out of curiosity, like what. Taking apart a single action army, because I've done it before, and putting it back together, it doesn't seem like you could screw that up. But he actually told me he uses feeler gauges when he puts these back together. And for the life of me, in the longest time, I could not figure out what the heck, like, I mean, I don't have an answer for sure, but it was like, how does that make any sense? Where would you use feeler gauges when you put this back together? The best thing I can think of is you've got a space between the hammer and the frame. And maybe, just maybe, because I think he did, one of the things he wrote in his sheet of stuff that he did on this gun was, I think he slightly relieved the hammer or something, or took it down just a little bit to where it bears on the frame of the gun as it's swinging forward in motion. So anyway, you've got a feeler gauge that could go maybe in. So the gun's taken apart completely, and you've got your hammer and you've got your frame, and you want to put it back in. And I'm thinking maybe if you are screwing this down, the hammer screw here. If you're screwing that down, maybe you have a feeler gauge here and you're tightening it to the point where there's a certain play. Like when you think of the frame maybe just barely elastically deforming. That's the best I could possibly guess. If someone else has another guess, by all means put it in the comments section, because I'm really curious about that. But yeah, I've never taken it apart past basic, when I clean it, and because that was his instruction. He said, hey, if you ever have an issue with something, if you want it cleaned, then just send it back and I'll do it. I'll take it apart and do it for you. So I've never completely pulled this thing apart. I do know he does a bunch of stuff to where, it's really easy for me to pull this back. And I think one of the things he does is he creates a new spring, and it's lighter. And so the normal Colt single action army from the factory, the spring itself, has to push through a lot of, friction points along the frame or whatever else, you know what I mean? So that's why it's heavier. But if you eliminate all that stuff and make it all smooth, and all these parts that are moving inside, you make all the bearings smooth, which I think is pretty much what he does with his action job on top of timing all that. It allows for a much lighter spring. So yeah, I can't say this is probably the only single action arm I'll ever own. And I just, like I said, I mostly own it because of Tombstone. I've never been in a gunfight, and I hope to never be in a gunfight, but this is not the gun that I would want in a modern gunfight. But yeah, it's just such a nostalgic, it's like the American Samurai sword, I guess, maybe that or the 1911. But this is definitely a piece that I always treasure, and it's quite a nice little piece. And side note, pro tip here, I guess learn from my mistake. If you have a zipper on while you're shooting, so I did this, basically I'm reloading, right? And I'm trying to catch the brass with my other hand, like this. Well, I've got it up against a jacket, which has a zipper. I learned this the hard way. You can see I rubbed the bluing right off, unfortunately, on that. So that was my silly mistake. But hey, it's a gun that, it's not meant to just sit in a case for me. I'm going to take it out and use it. I guess stuff like that happens. But yeah, take note of that if you shoot single action armies and are wearing a zipper in front. Yeah, I think other people have covered the single action army, but I think that's kind of the cool things that are specific to this. I also got a Colt letter. I'll show you that. It's kind of, because this is the only Colt letter that is not leather that I own, because they're kind of expensive, but it's nothing fancy. You can kind of see, I don't know, hopefully you can catch that on camera. I'll leave that up for a second or two. But yeah, it says it was shipped to someplace in Louisiana, September 4th, 2012, and there were apparently one other firearm that went along with that. So, and then finally, here's a receipt for the holster. Someone was asking about that from El Paso. So this is the West Harden holster. I think if I remember right, the story behind that holster was Wes Harden, that's the old outlaw. He was wearing that holster, and then some mob attacked him, and he dropped it when that was happening and left it behind somewhere. And I think that's the story behind that style of holster, and then that became the West Harden holster or something. I'm sure there's probably more to it. That's off the top of my head. My memory might be hazy on that, so by all means, comment in the comments section. And so this right here is Peacemaker Specialists. It's a pretty cool website. There's still a lot of cool information on there. If you're into single action armies, this is a cool website to go to. 100% worth it. But this is just, it's got the serial number. It says when he did the action job and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's just a little certificate you get. Like I said, I'm not sure if they still offer this service or not, because unfortunately, to my understanding, Eddie Janis passed away, but his wife, I think, still runs the parts business. I'm not sure if there's still someone, or if she maybe does the action jobs. I don't know still. But yeah, I think that's about it. Actually, I can add one more thing to this real quick. Let me grab one more thing. Since we're talking about this, I also purchased this holster, and they sell this on Peacemaker Specialists. It's by Thad Rabaka, and it is for the Colt Single Action Army, and this slides onto a normal belt, so if you don't want to wear that cowboy belt style thing, it's kind of nice for the range. This is, I think it's called the Speed Scabbard. You can definitely see it on their website. And Thad Rabaka makes phenomenal holsters. I have another one of his. I think he's not in business anymore, but if you write him, he will. He might do one for you if he responds back, basically, is what I've heard. So I'm going to do another video, I think, at some point on the 1911 holsters. I'll go more in detail with Thad Rabaka on that. But yeah, this is from Peacemaker Specialist. Thad Rabaka makes it for him. You can see there's the Peacemaker Specialist, and then there's Thad Rabaka, and he made this in 2021. But this is for the Colt Single Action Army, and as you can see, it fits right in, and it will fall out. I mean, obviously, this is a perfect fit. Like, Thad Rabaka knows what he's doing. By that I mean, there's no pressure point. There's no wobble. Like, it's great. A lot of the other holsters, like that El Paso holster, one of the things I had to do was take a Ziploc bag. This is a trick I'll talk about real quick. The trick you can do for a tight holster is take a Ziploc bag like this. You want to make sure your gun's oiled pretty good, because you'll trap moisture in this if there's any. So you'll take your Ziploc bag, a large one. I actually probably wouldn't use quite this big, but this will work for demonstration purposes. Then you just take your gun like this, take your holster, and then I'm not going to stick it in because I don't want to stretch this because it's good, but basically stick it in like so and leave it for like a day, 2 days, 3 days, pull it out. I would ideally be in like an air-conditioned place where the temperature is not going to change. And then once again, make sure the gun inside the Ziploc bag is well oiled. But then you pull it out and it will naturally stretch the leather. And if that doesn't do it for you, use 2 Ziploc bags and try it again, and even maybe 3. But at that point, I don't know, you might start questioning the holster. But anyway, that's a tip. But and I had to do that with this El Paso holster, because it was like, when I first got this, I mean, like, I could not pull this thing out of there at all. But that's to be expected. If you got a loose holster, you're screwed, because you can't do anything about it. But the Thad Rabaka holster, it's solid and it's awesome, and it's even got this little thumb loop thing to keep the gun in there. It's a great little holster, and they sell this on Peacemaker Specialists. So yeah, I think that's all I have on the Colt Single Action Army from Peacemaker Specialists and the associated holster, or I should say holsters. So there it is.